This is Koko, a 280-pound Western lowland gorilla who was given a small grey cat for her birthday. By every rule of nature, a gorilla should have zero interest in a tiny helpless kitten, and yet she carried him around like he was her own baby. She named him All Ball. She played with him with a care that seemed impossible in an animal her size. When All Ball was hit by a car and killed, someone told Koko in sign language. She signed back 3 words: sad, frown, cry. Now, Koko isn't alone. In 1996 at Brookfield Zoo in Chicago, a 3-year-old boy fell 18 feet into a gorilla enclosure and was knocked unconscious. Before any human could reach him, a female gorilla named Binti Jua walked over, cradled the boy in her arms, carried him safely to the door and waited for the paramedics. And it's not just gorillas. There are lionesses that have adopted baby antelopes, dogs that nurse litters of kittens, dolphins that escort calves of completely different species through open ocean. Later in this video, we're going to look at the exact circumstances that push animals to do this, the science behind why it happens and why it happens so much more than most people realise. But to understand this strange behaviour, we first have to ask a more basic question. Why are babies so important to us in the first place? The obvious answer is survival. You protect your offspring and they carry your genes forward. Simple. But if you watch animals closely, survival doesn't quite capture it. A mother elephant will stand over the body of her dead calf for days, sometimes longer, refusing to leave. She isn't doing this because it's strategically useful. Her calf is gone, and yet she stays. A mother octopus lays her eggs and then stops eating entirely. She spends the last weeks of her life guarding them, aerating them, cleaning them one by one. By the time they hatch, she is usually dead. What's driving this isn't instinct in the cold mechanical sense. To find out what it actually is, we need to go inside the brain. In the 1940s, an Austrian biologist named Konrad Lorenz made a strange discovery. He found that baby animals, across dozens of species, share a very specific set of physical features. Large heads, big wide eyes, soft rounded features. He called this the Kindchen schema, the baby schema. These features triggered a biological response in every adult who saw them, not just in the baby's own parent. When you see something with those features, a baby, a puppy, a kitten, a part of your brain called the nucleus accumbens lights up. That's the brain's reward center, the same region that responds to food when you're hungry, the same region that fires when you hear a song that makes you tear up. And here's where it gets interesting. The main chemical driving all of this is oxytocin, the bonding hormone. When a mother gives birth, oxytocin floods her system. It creates an almost irresistible pull toward the baby. But here's the thing, oxytocin doesn't check who the baby belongs to. It fires in response to the act of caregiving itself. Which means under the right conditions, it can fire for any baby, even one that looks nothing like you, even one that's supposed to be your prey. But the oxytocin system is just half the story. The other half happens inside the baby. And it might be even stranger. A baby giraffe hits the ground and walks within an hour. A baby shark is born ready to hunt. And then there are animals like us, humans, gorillas, dolphins, completely dependent, unable to do basically anything except cry and be held. Why would evolution produce something so fragile? The answer comes down to a trade-off, brain size versus birth canal. Humans and great apes evolved extremely large brains relative to their body size. But the skull that houses that brain can only grow so large before it becomes impossible to push out during birth. So evolution made a deal. Babies are born early, before their brains and bodies are fully developed, and the rest of development happens outside the womb. A human baby's brain doubles in size in the first year of life. A gorilla's brain continues developing for years after birth. Dolphins are born with only about 40% of their adult brain mass. What this means is that the period of helplessness isn't a flaw, it's a strategy. The brain gets to grow in the richness of the world, learning, responding, adapting, instead of being sealed inside a fixed skull. But that strategy comes with a cost. These babies need caregivers, desperately, for a very long time. And it creates something else too, something that matters for our story. It creates a window, a critical period where the baby is intensely sensitive to whoever is caring for them. That window is why the question, "Who made you?" turns out to matter a lot less than most people assume. But to understand why, we first have to understand what happens when that window opens and the mother isn't there. In the 1930s, Konrad Lorenz tried something unusual. He made sure he was the first moving thing a group of newly hatched goslings ever saw. The goslings immediately began following him everywhere. They followed him across fields, they followed him into the water. When Lorenz crouched down in tall grass, the goslings would lose sight of him and panic, calling out frantically until he stood up again. He had become their mother because he was there at the right moment. This is called imprinting, and it happens across a stunning range of species: birds, mammals, fish. There is a brief window of time shortly after birth when the young animal's brain is essentially asking one question: who am I supposed to follow? Whatever or whoever shows up during that window becomes the answer. And this matters for our story because imprinting works both ways. When a baby animal is separated from its mother by death, by disaster, by chance, and finds itself near another creature that responds to its distress, that creature can become the answer to the same question: who do I belong to? The baby initiates the bond, the adult's oxytocin responds, and sometimes an adoption begins. But this only works under very specific conditions. Imprinting only explains the baby's side. What makes the adult say yes? What creates that opening? In 2018, a killer whale named Tahlequah gave birth to a calf that died within 30 minutes. For 17 days, she carried her dead calf on her head through the Pacific Ocean. She pushed it through the water. She dove and retrieved it when it sank. She did not eat for much of that time. The other members of her pod stayed close, taking turns holding the calf when she needed to rest. What Tahlequah was experiencing has a name in behavioral science: grief. And here's what grief seems to do neurologically. It leaves the care systems in the brain activated with nowhere to go. The maternal drive is still there. The need to nurture, to protect, to bond, still firing, but there is no baby. And that creates a state of heightened readiness, a biological openness. A bereaved animal in the weeks following a loss is often more alert to the distress calls of young animals, more likely to approach, more likely to respond. The lioness who adopted the oryx calf, she had lost her cubs weeks before. The gorilla who carried a human infant in the Binti forest, she had miscarried earlier that season. Grief in animals may be one of the most powerful triggers for adoption, not just emotionally, neurochemically. The system that was ready to love something is still running. It just needs a recipient. Now we know the individual pieces that comes into play on a baby's adoption, but what happens when all three hit the animal at the same time? When you look at every case of cross-species adoption, the same three things keep appearing. There's an adult whose care system has been recently activated. A pregnancy, a birth, a loss, something that got the machinery running. There's a baby in distress close enough to trigger a response. And there's an absence of rejection. The normal filters, wrong smell, wrong species, wrong group, have gone quiet, usually because grief has dulled them. When all three overlap, something extraordinary happens. Take Surya, a female chimpanzee at Myrtle Beach Safari. In 2001, a human infant was accidentally separated from its mother near the enclosure perimeter. Surya had lost a pregnancy weeks earlier. She approached the distressed infant, lifted it, and held it against her chest for nearly 40 minutes until handlers could safely retrieve the child. Everything we've covered, the oxytocin that doesn't check species, the imprinting window that just needs someone to show up, the grief that leaves the care system running with nowhere to go. None of it is uniquely animal. We have the exact same system. Picture a woman sitting in a car outside a hospital. She's been waiting for 6 hours. The social worker walks out carrying a baby she has never met. And the moment that baby is placed in her arms, something shifts. The feeling is identical to what every birth mother describes. The baby is adopted, and yet the oxytocin is flooding her system. The care system is running at full capacity. The same system that ran in Koko when she held all ball. the same system that ran in Tahlequah for 17 days in the Pacific Ocean, the same system that ran in Surya when she held a human infant against her chest. There are roughly 8 million adopted humans in the United States alone, hundreds of millions more raised by step-parents who had no biological obligation to them. We call it parental love. We treat it like it's a human invention, something we built out of our culture, our choices, but it was never ours. While we were busy drawing lines, a lioness was lying down next to an oryx. A dolphin was guiding a stranger's calf through open ocean. A gorilla was holding a tiny kitten like it was the most precious thing in the world. What we call unconditional love may be, at its core, a care system that refuses to stay inside its original container. It does not ask for permission. It does not consult the rules of species or blood or belonging. It simply finds a need and answers it. Across every continent, in every climate, in every ecosystem on this planet, animals are doing what Koko did. They're not acting against their nature. They're showing us what nature, at its deepest level, actually is. We have spent thousands of years building philosophies about love without boundaries, arguing about who deserves it and who does not. And all that time, in forests, in oceans, in savannas, it was already happening. Perhaps love was never something we invented. Perhaps we only inherited it. Koko wasn't making an exception. She was doing exactly what she was built to do.